Martinsville Speedway could be a great opportunity for some hungry Ford drivers. Let's dive into the analytics and take a closer look at Martinsville Speedway by the numbers. I'm now joined by analytical expert from wintherace.info, Greg Mathern. Greg, it's great to see you this week. Hope you had a wonderful Easter holiday. Also, I know this weekend at Martinsville, you got some exciting news. Your Win the Race logo is on the back of Stephen Malazzi's truck. This paint scheme looks awesome. How excited are you and Ryan to see those colors on track?
Yeah, so thanks. It's great to be here. Had a fantastic Easter. But yeah, this weekend, we're super excited. We are sponsoring Stephen Malazzi as one of his, kind of top tier sponsors in the truck race on Friday. Truck scheme looks awesome. So Stephen's somebody who we kind of both came to know independently before we even came together at Win the Race, and kind of had each run into him separately. He's a young guy. He's a law student actually now, who just has some connections into the truck series with Rayoum Brothers, and he's a great guy who's just trying to have that experience that I think all of us would love to have. He's got some really lofty goals for himself this week that we're excited about. He thinks he's got a real shot to keep himself up on the lead lap, which would be phenomenal. So yeah, we're super excited. It's an awesome scheme, and we can't wait to see it running out some laps there.
It looks great, and it's really cool to see the Win the Race logo. You guys got like almost the whole truck bed. That's awesome. Going to be real clear and visible from the grandstands. That's great. Greg, let's talk Martinsville Cup for a few minutes here. Let's talk about some of the favorites this weekend. I think Ford has to have this date circled. They've been shut out of victory lane so far these first few weeks. Chevy and Toyota have basically dominated week in, week out, but Ford has shown glimpses at the shorter ovals. And I think in recent years at Martinsville specifically, they've shown even greater flashes. Like Ryan Blaney won here, obviously last fall. Stewart-Haas led over 260 laps here in the spring 1 year ago. So what do you think of Ford? Are there any specific Ford drivers or teams that you particularly have your eye on this weekend?
Yeah, Ford has been, very strong here. There's only 3 drivers who have finished in the top 10 in all 4 races here. They're all Fords. They are Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, and then Chase Briscoe. Which, again, those Stewart-Haas cars have been really good here. The issue is, as you said, Ford's been shut out of victory lane this year. And when we look at it, this year so far, it's been the Gibbs and Hendrick show, right?
Pretty much.
Suarez has a win at Atlanta, but just the domination that we've seen from the Gibbs cars and the Hendricks cars has been, almost a throwback to, pre-Gen 7 when we had some of these. And it's been a little while since we've seen that. If there's a track to do it, I think this is certainly the track that we're going to see some breakthrough. But then even then, if we look at it, Joe Gibbs has been, those cars have just crushed this small track, this short track package, right? They were absolutely dominant at Phoenix, led, basically every lap, at least every meaningful lap at that race. So it's kind of hard to think that we've got a great edge on the Ford guys right now, but then again, also with the Joe Gibbs guys, their odds have just been cooked down so far that it's just hard to see any value on any of the leaders right now.
Yeah, I was looking at the odds, and I do feel like the Fords are being disrespected a bit. I see Hamlin's name at the top. I see Larson. I see Truex. I got to scroll to find Chase Briscoe, who, I love that stat, has finished top 10 in all 4 Gen 7 Martinsville races. That's an incredible stat considering where Stewart-Haas is. But I do like Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano. If I'm leaning Ford, Blaney has an average finish of 3.75 here the past 2 years. Logano's average finish is 4. Like you said, they have been extremely solid, extremely consistent here. I want to talk more about Stewart-Haas racing, though. I mentioned Chase Briscoe. I feel like he's being disrespected or forgotten just a little bit. In this race 1 year ago, Stewart-Haas, I think, shocked the world a little bit. They qualified extremely well. All 4 of their drivers qualified in the top 10. Ryan Preece out of nowhere won the pole. They also qualified and ran here well in the fall. So it wasn't just a fluke, I'd say. I heard Chase Briscoe say this last week that he is in a contract year. The team has the option to decide whether to bring him back for next year or not. There are a lot of larger questions surrounding Stewart-Haas racing at this point. How big of a weekend is this for Stewart-Haas? And do you see a realistic shot of one of them winning this race?
Yeah, I mean, I think this has to be, even more than, the Ford camp as a whole having this circled. Like, this has to be the weekend that Stewart-Haas has been like, yep, this is our race. This is where we're gonna, kind of announce ourselves. As you said, last year they all qualified incredibly well, ran really well. I mean, Ryan Preece, but for, his mistake on pit road,
Yeah.
probably could have finished, top five. I mean, could have had a shot to win the race. He was very well, cruising out in front, and then, just made that mistake and kind of ended his day because, as we've seen, like, passing in the pack has been really hard here in this. But again, this is a great track for not just Stewart-Haas, but for their drivers. If we even look back to the lower series, this has been a great track for them. Barry has an Xfinity win here. Gragson has an Xfinity win. Again, we just mentioned, Briscoe has been 4 for 4 in the top 10 here. He's been, last year he was 2 for 2 in the top 5. So this is a phenomenal track for them. I think they have to be very excited about this. Again, for the win odds, I'm just so spooked by the power that we've seen out of Gibbs and Hendrick that I'm not really looking at them for the wins. But I have seen some value down the board. When we start traveling down the board, you can see some, top 10 odds, some even top 5 or top 4 odds that are kind of attractive for these guys. You can get Preece or Gragson up in the 225 to 250 range for a top 10, and when you look at the speed that this team has brought to this track, I think those are both really interesting numbers. The other spot that some people have kind of jumped on them, but I think the value's been cooked out as well, is qualifying. Odds on qualifying for the pole. But I think the books have kind of latched on to, like, hey, they qualified really well here. And I don't think any of them at this point are longer than about 25 to 1 for the pole, which just, ugh. Again, looking at the speed, particularly Hendrick, on qualifying, like, I'm just not quite there.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I'm rooting for Chase Briscoe this weekend. Hopefully he can turn those 2 top 5s here last year maybe into a podium finish, maybe into a win. I think that would be a really remarkable story. Big thing is no mistakes. No mistakes on pit road. That's what hosed Ryan Preece last year. It's going to be really hard to pass, even with this new short track package. So if you can qualify well, you got to stay up there. You have a great shot at the win. Now let's talk about the struggle bus. My attention immediately turns towards Richard Childress Racing. Kyle Busch is faded to 13th in points. Austin Dillon, I think, is back there in 28th. He's got a new crew chief, or I should say an old familiar face, returning to the crew chief position this week. But they've struggled this year. They've tinkered with their lineups, especially at the short tracks. I don't think we've seen much from RCR to start this year. But what are you seeing with Kyle Busch or maybe Austin Dillon as well?
I mean, for these guys, I've just got to throw my hands up in the air and go, what in the world is going on with this team? Because they started off really strong at the start of last year. And then as the year went on, they faded, particularly on the short tracks. And they've just not been a factor. When we talk about Kyle Busch, right? Kyle Busch used to be just terrifying. He was just a force to be reckoned with, and you could never count him out. He's a 2-time winner here. He's got 21 of his 37 starts here, finishes in the top 10. But in the Gen 7 car, he has not had it here, right? He's got 1 top 10 finish here in the Gen 7. And last year, they were both well outside the top 10, and there's just no speed. If we look at average running position on the short tracks, Phoenix and Richmond aren't exactly correlated. Martinsville's it's really its own animal, but we're looking at the same package. Busch was 25th in average running position at Phoenix, moved all the way up to a whopping 19th at Richmond, and he had a total of 7 laps in the top 10 at those 2 races. It's just there's something going on at that program that's not there. And so I'm fully fading him. I'm fully fading RCR. I'm fully fading Kyle Busch, which is crazy to think about that I am fading Kyle Busch, but it takes us back to the Stewart-Haas guys, right? So we've got some value here. There's a group bet over at DraftKings that has a group of Kyle Busch, Daniel Suarez, Noah Gragson, and Ryan Preece in it. And if we look, yeah, if we look at the kind of average running position of those four guys at Martinsville over the past 2 years, we've got Preece at 12.35, Suarez at 15.71, Busch 23.8, and then Gragson at 25.14. But Gragson's data is not good. It's not really relevant to what's going on here, because when we are pulling in that data, we're looking at stuff that happened when he was running in the legacy equipment, which just was not there, right? And so we're kind of throwing that out. We are getting both Preece and Gragson at plus 300 in that group. And so if you put an equal amount of money on them to win that group, you're effectively getting one of them to beat the other two at even money. And I just think that's a great value. Again, Suarez has shown a little bit of speed here, but this is not a Suarez track. This is not something that we expect him to be great at. And Busch is just sucking up all this value on just his name, and he's just not been there. The value has not been there. They're going to have to do something at RCR to bring that team back, because right now it's just not there.
Yeah, I mean, just this season alone at the short ovals, Kyle Busch was 25th at Bristol, 20th at Richmond, and his teammate Austin Dillon outside the top 20, finishing in both of those races as well. Maybe one of these weeks they will find that magic combination over at Richard Childress Racing, and we'll see the scary, formidable Kyle Busch that we all came to know and love or hate, depending on who you ask. But that's great stuff, Greg. For more of these great stats and analytics, folks can check you out over at wintherace.info. Really appreciate you being on this week. Looking forward to a fun triple header at Martinsville. Appreciate you joining us, Greg.
Absolutely. It's been a blast. Thanks for having me.